Sure. So the first thing that I always suggest to people, which is the easiest thing, it's the fastest thing you can all take away, is reduce liquid consumption with your meals.
Oh, I love
And
that one. I love that one. Nobody talks about that one. I love that one.
it's
Sorry.
part of the 5 steps to good
Go
digestion.
ahead.
So the thing is, you have, again, a visual. So if you take your stomach, and a lot of people tend to think of their stomach as like a washing machine and everything gets churned in, and that's not really how it works, because different types of foods digest at different times, right? So
Right.
we know beef takes a really long time to digest versus something like an apple that digests really quickly. So when you have all of these different food components sitting in your stomach, and you're in stress or haven't slept or whatever, and your digestive system isn't working optimally, and then you go and you pour in liquid, the digestive enzymes, which are potent acids, become diluted. And so they can't actually work on digesting down those molecules, especially the hard to digest ones, because you've now just diluted them. And so you get acid reflux and you have constipation and you're bloated because your food's not adequately digested, because you forgot to have your, 6 glasses of water throughout the day. So you chugged them at dinner, where your digestive enzymes are naturally less secreted at the end of the day anyway. So one of the biggest tips I could give people is just reduce liquid consumption, specifically carbonated fluids, cold fluids with your meal. Have them in between, wait 30 minutes before and 30 minutes after, or just lightly sip like lukewarm fluid, but don't chug water with your meal.
I love that one. I actually wrote about that in my 27 Habits book because it's so easy. But yet,
So
what do
easy.
people do? They all sit down for dinner and they chug down a bunch of
Chug.
food, and the last thing they do, they just slam their water or their beverage. My wife hates it that I have to sit there and drink my whole glass of wine before I'll start dinner, because
Yeah.
I refuse to drink anything after it. It's just
Yeah.
I don't know. My digestion's pretty good. It could be better, albeit, but I think that that's one of the easiest things you could possibly do. What's another tip that we can use to build digestion?
Chew your food. And these might seem stupid and they might seem so simple. And I feel a little silly saying don't drink water and chew your food, but the fact of the matter is that we don't chew.
Right.
And if we look at what leaky gut was, and I said before, it's undigested food particles sitting and molding and growing yeast spores in your gut to make the lining of your stomach porous so that that food can seep out. If you chew your food, you're doing a lot of the work for your digestive system.
Right.
So it's much easier to actually let, your food digest and then pass through into where it needs to go to, so you can actually absorb the nutrition from your food. And a lot of us don't even realize we don't chew. We just like chew, chew, swallow versus like sitting down and enjoying. And that comes with a lifestyle change. That comes
Sure.
with the awareness of I'm about to eat food, so I should sit down and focus on it, versus checking your phone and the kids and all of these other various factors. But chewing and not drinking water, like
I
they're
love
they're simple, but they're
that.
life changing. I had a client once who had a Diet Coke with his dinner, and he had acid reflux, and he had tried everything, the pills, the tablets, the this, that. I said, just do me a favor, just don't drink the Diet Coke with your meal. Have it a half an hour after. And within 3 days, he emailed me and he was like, wow. He's like, I never would have thought that that one Diet Coke could have, been the catalyst for my acid reflux. But it is.
That's wild. I think that's
Yeah.
such a great tip too, Lori. There's actually, I don't know if you knew this, but there was a movement in the early 1900s called Fletcherizing, from Dr. Fletcher, who was somebody who was curing digestive issues. That's where I first heard about chew your food more. And he was the first guy to popularize chew, 50 times before you swallow kind of thing. And
Yep.
it's just so crazy that people don't think about it. Like, just think about how hard it is for you to digest a chunk of chicken the size of, like a dime, versus if you grind it up into little tiny particles. Like, think about how
Yep.
much easier that is on your body to digest.
Yep.
So that's like,
Yep.
you're blowing people's minds with this truth dynamite today. All right, what's another one? What's another one we can use to heal our digestive system?
So depending on whether you're in stress or not, and this is something I like to give to people who feel like they're running around with their heads cut off like
Sure.
chickens, is just don't eat. If you're under stress, your body can't digest food anyway. So just don't eat, or have something that's pre-digested, like a shake or applesauce, even if you feel like you need the energy, or a bowl of like clear soup, bone broth, for
I
example,
was just gonna
something like
say
that.
broth.
Bone broth. We've talked about that many times, but when you're under stress, whether it's chronic or acute, we're not meant to be digesting. We're meant to be fighting or fleeing.
Sure.
So it's better for you to not eat than to eat and not digest your food, because then you have two problems. You're stressed out and you have poor digestion.
Right. Right.
So, usually people are either really hungry and have cravings when they're under stress, or they don't want to eat anyway. And so if you are fall into the camp of, you experience cravings, we can talk about the psychological response and why that actually happens. But having something in your mouth just to satisfy those centers, those sort of like pleasure centers in terms of giving your body what it's asking you for, works wonders. Piece of gum, a mint, a candy, something, the craving goes away, and then you can get through that stressful period without actually consuming in food and ruining your digestive system.
That's so powerful right there. I mean, I'm smiling. If you guys are listening to the podcast rather than watching the video cast, I'm smiling because she's sharing such powerful, simple tips. And I usually don't get this excited during a podcast, but these are such simple things that I've personally been doing for a long time. And Lori and I didn't talk about this before the call at all. So it's just really, really cool for me to see that she's on the exact same page. I have a cousin who has Crohn's disease, and she's only 12 years old, and it's actually my cousin's daughter, but so she calls my wife, and she's always asking me questions about what to do and blah, 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 and I'm just trying to point her in the right direction as best I can. And she's like, what do I do? She says she's not hungry, but she hasn't eaten today and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. And I said, what's the problem? If she doesn't want to eat, don't let her eat. Like she doesn't have to. Like if she's sick in bed and it's been like 5 days or something like that, now you have a completely different story. But if it's like the afternoon and you skip breakfast and lunch, you're not going to die from that. In fact, your body can heal when you're not consuming food. And that's just such an amazing thing. Now, you gave 3 awesome tips on digestion. Before we got on the call and actually started recording, you were talking about the reason why this is so important is because you take a hormonal standpoint on body composition and health rather than a calorie standpoint. So let me start with just kind of the negative side of it, which is why the heck do people still say calorie, you still have to think about a calorie and that's the only way to lose fat? Like, why is Jillian Michaels like calories in, calories out, that's it? Why is that?
Well, we might get into a bit of a fight right now, but I think that both are important. You can't have one without the other, because calories are portion sizes. And so we live in a society of massive portion distortion. For example, most people don't know that the proper portion size of quinoa is 1/3 of a cup. When you eat more than 1/3 of a cup at one time, and I'm talking for the average person, not the person who exercises like crazy insane amounts, but for the average person, if you eat more than 1/3 of a cup, that signals your body to oversecrete insulin. And so, because that's a proper portion size in terms of grams of carbohydrates. So if we look at calories from a proper portion size perspective, then they matter. They matter. There's no way around it. They matter. But if we ignore the fact that food quality matters more, then we're silly. Then we're just sort of kidding ourselves. So they have to be a partnership where you understand that the quality of the calories should be the first question. And then the second question should be, how much am I eating?
Sure. No, yeah, I had my bubble burst when I had a bodybuilder on the call, and he said calories are simply a way to measure what you're putting in your body. Yeah. And so, a calorie may not be a calorie for you as it is for me, but if we both track our calories, we're both going to know what's happening and why. It's just a piece of data. And so, it's a good piece of data. I prefer to track grams of macronutrients myself, but that's just the same math equation as it is to calories.
They're the same. Yeah. Right? They're the same. Most people don't understand. Well, that's really what calories are, right? If you look at, and we could get into this whole scientific thing, but that's really what it is. And when I say 1/3 of a cup of quinoa, it yields whatever it yields, like 120 calories, which equates to 25 grams of carbohydrates and some protein, right? So it's one and the same. But the fact of the matter is that we know that a calorie isn't just a calorie across the board. We already know this. It's not news. But what perhaps is news is that based on where you are from a hormonal standpoint, like we were talking about before, certain foods are healthy and certain foods are unhealthy. So just to give a blanket statement that quinoa is a superfood and it's healthy for you, or gluten-free is good, or whatever it is I think irresponsible from health professionals, because depending on the person's, like we said, digestive system and their hormonal perspective, it might not be a good choice for that person.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So what do you typically do with your clients? I know that you actually coach the nutritionists and you have a bunch of facilities now, but what do you typically do with your end users to help them optimize their hormones? Like, what's the starting point? You gave us the digestive tips. That's going to help already. What's the hormone optimization tips?
So the starting point first and foremost is we always look for hypoglycemic response. So for example, if they go longer than 3 or 4 hours without eating, how do they feel? Do they get headachy? Do they get, do they have cravings? What time of day do they have cravings? Do they become, like a bitch, or cry at the drop of a hat, or whatever, irritable, or whatever it is, can't think, brain fog, whatever. So that really signals to us that their blood sugar levels are fluctuating, and that's, frankly, it's an easy fix. It starts with breakfast, and it's a much easier fix than people think about it. Throw in some protein, a good fat at your breakfast, and you're good to go. So we work from symptoms. So, and it's not symptom in and of itself. It's out of the whole day. It's out of the whole body perspective, and that's what makes us different in terms of holistic nutritionists versus the calorie counters and the fitness professionals and everyone else. Is we look at, okay, how are you living your life? How are you feeling? What symptoms do you experience? And then how can we create a program for you that you'll actually follow?
Yeah. Making
it super simple. And we all fall victim to, the change your life in 20 minutes or less quick fix pill that we all want to have. But at the end of the day, you can't separate symptoms. You can't separate challenges and lifestyle factors. It all has to be meshed into one. And so we really do. But we start with hypoglycemic response, and we start with breakfast.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
How do you deal with kind of shattering people's paradigms around hypoglycemia? And the only reason I ask is this is kind of the first time I talk about this, but my mom was recently told that she's pre-diabetic, right? She's pre-diabetic, and I was just like, oh my God, this is something that we know how to solve. Yeah. This isn't like cancer where there's like a million different components into it.
Right.
This is something that we know how to solve. And it's still just extremely challenging for her to make that shift to realizing that maybe just starting the day with some protein and some high quality fats is going to be the change that she needs. And it's just, how do you deal with someone who's having a hard time with that paradigm shift, with the changing of their beliefs?